Well, raise your hand if you expected one of the most popular games of 2022 to be about a cat. My hand's not raised because... What? I'd heard of Stray before this, and had a friend who was absolutely buzzing for it, but from what I'd seen, it looked like a cute and charming indie game at best. Totally harmless at worst. I didn't get it at launch, instead waiting on a price drop on the physical edition, which was harder to find than I thought. It was one of the top games on Steam, received massive praise from critics and fans alike, and it even got nominated for Game of the Year at Jeff Keighley's Game Awards. Like, wow. The game was developed by a small indie studio, Blue 12 Studios, and this is their only game. I'm always happy to see an indie game do well, as you know the team behind these games poured their soul into making it, so I'm sure the reception was a surprise even to them. Although I say that, I'm sure having the game being based around a cute cat was a huge part of why this game's marketing was so strong. Still, it left me skeptical, but upon playing the game myself, I can say it was better than I was expecting, but I really think that comes down to the fact that the cat isn't just an image to push units. No, believe me, the cat dictated how this entire game was designed. Okay, we're starting up and we're chilling with our feline friends near some pipes. Everything looks pretty to start with, except there's pissing it down. Can't escape that when you're English, I guess. This prick looked at me funny, so I had him. Knows not to mess with me again. But I'm not exactly sure what to do, so I do what I normally do when that situation arises, and go to sleep. After a good nap, me and the boys decide to head out and walk along some rusty pipes in what looks to be the outskirts of some huge facility. Our cute as hell protagonist, Cat, can jump when prompted, scratch certain things that look like they need a good claw, sprint, and meow. And this first area simply serves to make you understand you are a cat. So do cat things. And already, I'm a little worried. I'm like, oh, this is going to be it, isn't it? Like, it's cute, and the graphics are amazing, but please show me more. Luckily, well, for me, not for the cat, we try and join our buddies but end up falling. They don't seem to care that we're probably not going to survive. Guess this guy still sore about his loss earlier. I land and Cat licks our wounds before beginning to make my way through a dark and dank place and... Oh. Dead City? What the hell? Okay, I thought this game was just cute. So, yeah, let's compliment this game immediately on one thing it excels in. Atmosphere. Yes. Wow. Stray's atmosphere is just amazing. As you travel as a creature that is just as clueless as you through a dead city, there's such a creepy vibe in the parts of the city that are dark and empty. The lighting is amazing. This is a dystopian city that feels like it's got a dark secret, something totally unclear in the first section of this game, as we see ruins and graffiti implying something much, much darker. Like, what's going on here? Where are the people? Why is there no light? We don't know, but there's nothing else to do but press on. We get our first taste of gameplay here when traversing the city, interacting with environments in a way that a cat would. This isn't like a typical third-person adventure game where you have to move objects out of the way, as for the most part here, you just go over them, or around them. I was initially a little iffy on the idea that you couldn't jump a little more freely, but I think the game proves later on that this was likely for the best, and leads to a unique type of puzzle solving in the latter half. Anyway, back to our travels. We keep coming across these monitors telling us to follow them, and considering it's the only source of interaction we have at this point in time, we keep going. Eventually, we start seeing these little bug creatures running about, and oh god, what are they? Run, run, run! Okay, get off me, you little parasite. What is going on? Oh god. Go. Okay. We made it. What the shit was that? Okay, well, shaking that off, we explore more of the city, following neon signs that seem to be some sort of clue, as well as seeing some more of the types of environmental puzzles that we would be facing, such as rolling barrels into the right place or swinging off hanging beams, using the momentum to reach the other side. It's simple, but clever. This goes on until we find ourselves in the flat. And oh, where did that thing go I was carrying? Guess I wasn't meant to take that in here. It's here where we find a computer saying that it needs help and its data is corrupted, to which we promptly respond. It then asks us to find a body. Okay, sure, there's one in the next room apparently, so we do that and end up booting this little robot up with the name B12. However, it flies and it clearly doesn't know our street stats, so we give it a little more of what we gave the other guy and he goes down. The little robot gets back up again, however, and introduces itself saying that while its memory is corrupted, it knows it was the assistant to a scientist, but to call it B12. He is already running low on power though, so in order for us to not be alone, he asks us to wear this jacket, which is bloody heavy, but we get used to it. I'd like to point out that I think B12 is able to speak cat. Initially, I thought it was just a way to communicate with the player, but no, as the game progresses we see more different languages being translated, so I guess he can speak to the cat. Anyway, we break a code and begin to make our way out, with B12 saying that we need to go up to get out of here. We end up finding some wall art of the outside, which B12 remembers he promised someone that he would go to, and we get a postcard for our troubles, which introduces us to the concept of B12 memories. Throughout the game, you can find glowing spots which will trigger B12 to react and give us some insight into his past and the world itself. There are core memories that you can't miss, and smaller ones that are totally optional, but worth going for as I feel they are the main collectible of this game, which I think gives the areas a little more depth, as finding these little passageways and being rewarded with some lore and dialogue is a good feeling, though don't feel too bad if you miss any. There are other uses for the inventory system too, but we'll talk about this in a minute. After travelling over more and more of these disgusting creatures, we squeeze through a gap and find... a man? A robot? Well, they aren't happy to see us as they sound the alarm off and they all run? Not attack? What's going on here? We end up facing off against one of these robots dressed as a samurai, who we can't understand at first, but luckily B12 is able to translate. This guardian says that we aren't a Zerg, and that they aren't familiar with our kind, telling us that we're welcome as long as we don't eat anyone. Yeah, this guy's heard about me. Anyway, upon showing anyone our photo, we are pointed to someone called Momo, who once worked with a group called the Outsiders, who tried to escape to the outside, but eventually gave up as the elevator doesn't work and these Zerg creatures swarm the city, making it impossible to leave the slums. However, we are able to convince him to help us. Now, from this point on, I feel we can really get into what makes the gameplay of Stray work so well. We can stop looking at it minute by minute as well. It's simply now a matter of working with the Outsiders to make our way outside. From the moment we meet these robots, the companions as the game calls them, we aren't just two creatures in an empty world. There's good people down here, continuing to live despite the circumstances. What's really going on, as we discover, is that there was a great plague that was spreading around humanity. So in order to allow humans to survive, giant walled cities were built to protect those inside. The companions were built in order to aid humans, and at first had no personalities of any kind, and in order to deal with the issues involving waste disposal, scientists created biological matter that was able to eat waste. However, this didn't last forever, as the plague would eventually make its way into the city, and this, alongside the biological matter transforming into the Zerg creatures that could consume anything, caused humanity to be wiped out within the city. As a last resort to try and keep the plague in, the ones in charge closed the shutters, leaving the city in total darkness, allowing the Zergs to mass produce. God knows how many years later, the companions began to deviate from their roles, and strangely, ended up repeating human behaviour. While this may seem odd, there is a nicety to it all. You don't need hair for a barber's to be a nice experience. It's odd, but cute. Highlights the little things, you know? The Outsiders help us progress through the city, at one point even giving us a weapon to destroy the Zerg, as they hate the light. But by making our way through the slums, the sewers, Ant Town, and Midtown, we are eventually able to power up the train that ran to the top of the city. Along the way, B12 remembers that he was in fact the scientist he thought he worked for, someone who wanted to save humanity, so uploaded himself to the digital network, as you do, and waited for so long that he forgot his own identity. If it seems like I'm skimming over these parts of the game, it's because while the sections such as the jailbreak are cool sequences, it doesn't necessarily add a lot to the narrative. Most of what happens is just giving us time with the four members of the Outsiders, who are fine enough characters, willing to sacrifice their chance of seeing the outside in order to help free the city. But there isn't much point going into the finer details in my opinion. They help us get where we're going, so thanks. We arrive in what looks to be a control room with an amazing view over the city, and I will stop and say now that I love how in this game you can constantly see how far you've travelled by looking down at the slums from Midtown, or by looking at the whole damn city from up here. It's immensely satisfying to be able to point out locations from a distance, and shows what a memorable world they made here. But after getting through security, we're able to breach the controls and finally open up the city walls, at the cost of B12 shorting out. A moment I found legitimately sad, as this guy waited so long, only to succeed, but not get to see it. In the game's final moments, we step outside and breathe in the fresh air. There's nothing left to do, except find this guy and go for round 2. Despite the dead nature of the city, it all manages to feel so alive, and it's super immersive. Plus, if you walk under the companions, they stack it. The story might generally be simple, but just like a wise ogre once said, Stray's story is like an onion, it has layers. But what makes it all work here is the level design. Stray's areas are split up into two categories. You have your linear sections where you simply have to progress through the area, solving puzzles and dealing with the Zerg, and the open areas such as the slums, Ant Town, and Midtown. The linear areas attempt to stay engaging by varying up what you do in each area. And while it does keep the variety good, it feels a little experimental, as most of these ideas are only used once or twice. For instance, initially you have to bait the Zergs away from where you're going, using their meow to get your attention, and I really liked this as it was pretty tense and kept me on my toes. But then you get a light weapon to kill them, which I feel wasn't very fun to use and sort of doesn't fit the vibe of the game. I don't know, I just found it awkward. But then we lose the weapon, and the Zergs stop showing up towards the end, as we get some stealth sections avoiding these drones, which are okay, although I feel like you can just run past everything. The prison break was fun, locking these drones inside the cells, but this is literally only done for this one sequence in this one room. I think these parts feel a little too experimental, and it doesn't ever combine the skills you built. Once it's over, that's it, and I think that's a little weird. However, the environmental puzzles mostly make up for it, so I don't mind too much when the stages are as short as they are. The parts I enjoyed the most are the open areas, like wow, the slums. I think this is one of the most well-designed hub areas I've seen in a game ever. Without holding your hand, it manages to guide you through the puzzles by simply using the environment and the characters to point you in the right direction. There are side quests to complete, as well as a shop exclusive to this one area. There's so many little hidden areas to find, incredibly memorable landmarks to help you get your bearings. I love this area. Searching high and low to find the music sheets for the guitarist and bottles to trade for items. This was also fun, and the reason it's so fun is how it's designed. You can climb on pretty much anything that looks like you could walk on as a cat. There's plenty of tiny gaps you can fit through, windows to sneak in, and doors to scratch to get them to open up. You can even play pool. Not very well, but we're having fun here. Legitimately, I made sure I did everything in the slums and got all those pointless badges because this was absolutely awesome. The highlight of the game by far. The ant town is much smaller, but there's still a couple of areas to explore, and you can absolutely ruin these guys' day. What move are you gonna make, mate? Yeah, come on, make a move. Well, here's my move. Look how annoyed they are. Midtown was admittedly a little overwhelming at first, but just like the slums, I learnt it like the back of my hand by the end, although I don't like it as much, mostly as there's less ways to climb and get around due to the more open nature of Midtown. However, I absolutely love the section where you have to steal a hard hat and jacket from the shops by talking to the citizens and figuring out how to either sneak inside a closed shop in a delivery box, or to create a distraction to draw the owner away. That part was amazing. There's more badges to find here too, but I just don't think it's as enjoyable to explore. I do kind of wish the memories and badges did a little more than being just a collectible. There's absolutely no reason to get these, and while many, like me, often just like the joy of the hunt, I feel there should have been a more tangible reward, like more health or faster running speed. You can die in Stray, so it's not like it wouldn't be helpful. That's not the case, obviously, but I think these open areas are the highlight, and if we get another game like this, I hope they play to their strength, because wow. The game has quite a long soundtrack for how short it is, and it's good for setting the mood, but I wouldn't say I could remember any of it. But graphically on the PS5, the dystopian setting looks absolutely stunning, with areas such as Midtown managing to perfectly contrast the bright neon lights with the puddles and trash on the floor, keeping it all nice and dank. I didn't have any performance issues, keeping it a lovely 60 FPS the entire time. The only graphical hiccup I noticed was at the end when the light pours over the city. The pop-in was absolutely awful. I can't imagine what that part was like on the PS4. I also got stuck here and had to reset. Not a big deal, but just thought I'd mention it. Yeah, Stray. It's a great time. But while the game is very short, only about 4 hours on a first run exploring absolutely everything, I'm sort of glad. This game didn't need to be any longer than it was, for as great as some of it is, I feel with the lack of new permanent upgrades, there isn't really much more that Stray could have done with this format. However, since this game is as short as it is with not a whole lot of replayability, I think it's worth making sure you get this game on the cheap. I do recommend playing this though, as it was genuinely better than I expected, and I might even try and speedrun it at some point, as that seems like a fun idea. Something the devs probably knew, as there's trophies for beating the game in a short amount of time. Could you argue that it's still just a cute and charming indie game that got overhyped? Probably, but I think it's more than that. It's a game that manages to have a personality beyond just cat. You like cats? I prefer dogs, but if you want to tell me I'm wrong, please leave me a comment and don't forget to subscribe. We're going proper retro next time with someone who's getting a new movie soon, so I'll see you then.